Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Iron and today we wanted to address this question. I've had this question come at me a couple of different ways on Discord here in our YouTube community, as well as a few text messages and voice conversations that I've had with folks over the last several weeks. And the question simply boils down to, is Path of Exile dying? Spoiler, I'm going to tell you my answer, just my quick answer, no. There's my answer. And for the next couple of minutes, we're going to talk about why that is, why it looks like it's dying, why it looks like the player count is down, or why it feels like the player count is down, but why Path of Exile is actually in a very, very healthy spot, and we should be excited about things to come, as well as a little bit skeptical about the present league, the Synthesis League, which is pretty much surrounding most of the hubbubaloo and the backlash that Path of Exile is experiencing right now. So if at any point in time you'd like to jump ahead to a particular section of the video or review a particular section of the video, there are timestamps placed directly above my slightly balding forehead, and those are hot linked down for you down below in the video description. So first off, I just wanted to compare Path of Exile with two other action RPG games in the same genre, and two competitors essentially, and just really quickly take a look. So we've got Path of Exile, we've got Grim Dawn, and we've got Diablo 3. These are presently three of the biggest names in the action RPG world. And right now, you've got kind of a lull in terms of the competition with Path of Exile. So when Red Shirt Guy asked the question, you know, hey, is this a joke? Are we for real at BlizzCon about whether or not there were any hopes or plans for Diablo Immortal to come to PC, and was then laughed off the stage by the famous quote, you know, do you guys not have phones? Well, when that moment hit, it really solidified last year in 2018. It really solidified Path of Exile's dominance in the particular PC action RPG market in terms of present ongoing updates and present ongoing releases. That was last year. That's looking back to last year, the end of last year with BlizzCon. And you can see Diablo has been in the market and still owns a massive portion of the market share of the action RPG audience. I'm sure several of you that are watching this video love Diablo 3 or love Path of Exile or love other action RPGs because of the Diablo series. Even Path of Exile and Grim Dawn both have started out as homages to Diablo 2. So there's a lot of us that play action RPGs because we got our start either with Diablo 1, Diablo 2, or with Diablo 3, and it's been around for a long time. So in terms of comparing all three of these options, there's at least got to be some level of recognition about the environment, the ecosystem that we're in right now, where Diablo was first into this market in terms of its marketability and popularity, not necessarily first in the market in terms of historically, but just you know, of when it released, but just in terms of primacy in the market. Diablo 3 has had and continues to have the biggest market share, even though they haven't released an expansion since March of 2014. Now you've got Grim Dawn that is not on console. It's to be announced when it's going to come out on Xbox One, and they most recently came out with Forgotten Gods, which just came out last month in March of 2019. Then you've got Path of Exile, which came out on Xbox One in 2017, and PlayStation 4 most notably in March of this year, 2019, and it had its most recent large expansion, right? What its equivalent to an expansion would be, was Betrayal in November of 2018. Those of you that are saying, hey Iron, what about Synthesis? Synthesis is a league, it's not a full-on expansion. If you want to parse out the particular differences between those two terms and how Grinding Gear Games uses them when they're releasing content, you can do that if you so choose. But this is from the official language of GGG. This was their expansion for this year. And then, of course, there's another expansion coming next year, eventually when 4.0 gets released. So I wanted to just open the conversation by saying, look, we're talking about Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, and Diablo 3. That's at least some of the contributing factors to all of this discussion about Path of Exile. Is Path of Exile dying? Now, there's some different ways that we can look and monitor whether or not something is doing well. One of these ways is, of course, looking at Twitch. And so this is using the website sullynome.com. And it just simply gives us some traffic sources and some traffic overview for particular games, for particular viewerships, for particular streamers. And so right here, you can actually look and see exactly where the ebbs and the flows are in terms of the Path of Exile community on Twitch. And it's no shock that over the last year, this is looking over the course of an entire year, we're looking from April of 18 to April of 19. You go all the way back. Hey, here's Bestiary gets released. Here's Incursion gets released in, when is this? September-ish? No, that maybe-ish. The order of these releases is Bestiary, Incursion, Delve, Betrayal, and Synthesis, which brings us all the way up to now. So maybe this is actually Incursion. So this is after Bestiary release. This is Incursion, and then you've got Delve, and then you've got Betrayal, which was our all-time peak in Path of Exile. And then you've got Synthesis. So when players right now look at Synthesis and say, oh, Synthesis is dying, Path of Exile is dying, things are going terrible. Well, when you look at the all-time peak viewers, no, is Synthesis building on what Betrayal did? No, it's not. It's not nearly as high at its peak viewership as what Betrayal was. But at the same time, when you look at the constant flow of viewers, yes, are things trending downward right now? Sure, but the spike is still much, much higher even than Delve or Incursion League. So there could be some factors here. One could simply be the timing of the year. It could simply be that both Bestiary and Synthesis are poorly received leagues, maybe because the development cycle is a little bit lower or quicker, because the developers simply have less time to do it because they've got the holiday season that is going on while they're planning out the spring league. That's one factor. Another factor could simply be that a lot of the player base of Path of Exile isn't as interested in Path of Exile during the summer and during the early fall as they are during the hardest parts of winter in much of the world that plays Path of Exile in Northern Europe, as well as in Northern Asia, as well as in North America. No offense to those of you who play elsewhere. I'm simply stating places where it gets cold, there's less things for us to do outside, so we stay inside and we play video games more. And so when you look at these peak numbers, that's at least one factor to take into consideration. It's not the end-all be-all, it's just a factor. Another factor to take into consideration when we're comparing all of these games is to look at their releases of regular seasons and regular content. So this is comparing not just expansions, not just major expansions, but regular updates and regular refreshers. Regular market hype cycles where the game is telling players, hey, welcome, there's a fresh experience for you if you come back to the game now. This is comparing Path of Exile with Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls with Grim Dawn. It's comparing all three of them. Grim Dawn is in red. And you can see just on Twitch, Grim Dawn is just straight up a blip over the last 365 days. It is just a blip up until Forgotten Gods gets released here in March. And then all of a sudden it's like Forgotten Gods actually pulls people's attention, and I believe that this is correlating to players from Path of Exile getting sick of the Synthesis League, not getting sick of Path of Exile, but simply burning out a little bit on Synthesis League and saying, hey, you know what, I want to take a break from PoE, that's totally fine, and so I'm going to go try out another action RPG that's maybe a little bit different and that maybe scratches a little bit different of my motivations at that particular time. So don't be shocked when you see Diablo and Path of Exile numbers go down and then Grim Dawn numbers go up, and vice versa. Don't be shocked when you see these different cycles when you're looking at Diablo versus Path of Exile. Now, those of you that were saying earlier, oh, Iron, you were saying that, oh, Iron, maybe Diablo 3's got a bigger market share. Well, just go look at the numbers on Twitch. PoE beats it regularly. You'd be right. And most recently, you can look at these numbers and say, absolutely, you are totally right. There are some spikes where Diablo gets really, really close and even overtakes Path of Exile. But for the most part, Path of Exile is beating out Diablo in terms of Twitch viewership over the last 365 days. All right, when we go to the Google Trends Comparer, this is just another evaluative tool. This isn't the end-all, be-all. It doesn't say everything that needs to be said, but it's just another factor for us to take into consideration. When you look at the search terms of Path of Exile versus Diablo 3, you can see in terms of Google's searches, people are interacting more with the Diablo 3 as a search term than with Path of Exile as a search term. Now, does this tell us, oh my goodness, there is more people that are playing Path of Exile versus playing Diablo, or more people playing Diablo than Path of Exile? No, this is just telling us Google. This is just telling us when people go to Google and type something in, what are they typing in? And when you look at this, the red is the Diablo 3 and the blue is Path of Exile. So you can see that there is a little bit of a bump here in March and in April, but then the upswing presently, the trend is for things to catch back up again for Diablo. There was a little bit of a peak here again last year in June, which this would have been, I believe, right in the middle of Incursion League, or right around the release of Incursion League, right in the middle or the beginning of summer the Summer Games release, comparing Path of Exile to Diablo 3. Another factor to consider is Diablo 3 and Path of Exile and Grim Dawn have all got different release schedules for when they've all gone onto console. So most recently, Path of Exile has expanded to the PlayStation 4 platform. And I don't think that that is a small factor. That for people that are saying, yeah, well, you know what, Iron, your numbers are great, but I'm playing in Synthesis right now, and it feels like nobody is trading. I would agree with you that there are times where it feels like trading this league has been dead. I've been playing hardcore for Synthesis League, and so it's been just a little bit of a refresher for me. I try to take every other league, and I had taken a break from playing hardcore last year when me and Mrs. Draconis had our newest baby. So this is my first league for over a year back in hardcore full-time as just playing that exclusively. So my experience has been that it's a little bit slower in terms of the trade market, but that's just because it's hardcore. There's less players. What I've heard from a lot of you who are guildies in the Good Guy Gaming Guild on Path of Exile is that things have been slow at periods of time, but then whenever there's been an update or a patch to fix things, that trade has picked up, that a lot of players have returned. But I don't think this is a small thing to take into consideration, that there's a lot of people that own PlayStation 4s, and it could be that they're migrating or at least trying out PlayStation 4 versus playing Path of Exile on the PC edition. When you compare the Google Trends of Path of Exile versus Grim Dawn, it's very, very interesting just to see how closely aligned they are at their lowest and highest marks respectively. So when Path of Exile is in its lowest moments of engagement, you can see that Grim Dawn is actually pretty close and pretty steady to picking up towards it in terms of the Google trend of what people are searching for. And actually with Forgotten Gods release and the build-up March 17th through the 23rd, Forgotten Gods actually, I believe, got released on the 26th. You can actually see that that is a time when Grim Dawn caught up to Path of Exile in terms of Google inquiries. That's about the same time when we see a lot of different very, very popular streamers and YouTube content creators and community members in Path of Exile begin to not only play Path of Exile, but also begin to showcase some content in Grim Dawn. So when you look at the Steam charts of Grim Dawn, you can just look. This is over the last year of content. You can see things are just straight up steady for its consistent continual player base. And then all of a sudden from March 18th till March 25th, which of course is when Forgotten Gods gets released, the newest expansion for Grim Dawn, boom, there's this massive player spike all the way up to 19,000. And you can see the gain over those last 30 days right here. The average number of players is over 8,000 players. Not quite over 9,000. For those of you that are wanting the over 9,000 memes, we're not quite there. But it's very, very high, and you can see the peak players is quite large. It's almost an all-time peak at 19,435. Not quite an all-time peak from where it was in October of 2017, but very, very close for Grim Dawn. And there's a lot of people playing Grim Dawn right now. What a shock. Some of the people from Path of Exile are going over to Grim Dawn. I had a buddy and a G3 supporter, Luca, over a year and a half ago tell me about Grim Dawn and say, dude, Iron, you really got to try this out. And I didn't, because I was in the midst of having a baby plus still playing Path of Exile. So very, very interesting to see how Grim Dawn is catching up and picking up steam. No pun intended there, but picking up momentum from players. Now, when you compare it with Path of Exile, no shock here in terms of the concurrent players and in terms of the cycle. This is very, very common. You can just see all of these numbers that are in red are basically times where there's not an update or a new league being announced or played in Path of Exile. And all of the times when the numbers are green, basically that's a month where there's new content that's coming out for Path of Exile. So no shock there. In terms of the peak players on Steam charts, again, this doesn't track for Path of Exile anybody that's playing on the standalone client. This doesn't track anybody that's playing on the Xbox One client. This does not track anybody playing on the PlayStation 4 client. This is, again, just another data point. It's not the sum, end all, be all. It's just another data point that says, hey, there's a ton of people playing, and maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons why it looks like there's less people playing now during Synthesis than actually are because maybe some of these people are no longer playing on their PCs. Maybe some of them are playing on their PlayStation 4s. That's just one possible explanation. It could also be that they're simply not playing Path of Exile. That's a possible explanation. But my opinion is no, Path of Exile is not dying. When you compare Grim Dawn to Path of Exile, you can see, again, here's that loop of basically new content, new leagues that are coming out. Everybody comes on, logs on, gets hyped, gets excited, plays it for a couple of weeks, and then drops off onto another game. And when you compare it to Grim Dawn, you can see that at its peak, Grim Dawn is still, less than half the size of Path of Exile just on Steam alone, let alone on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, as well as on the standalone client. Now, I had mentioned a couple of different prominent community members that have been interacting with Forgotten Gods and with Grim Dawn. And I'm just going to run through a couple of them here and give them some shout outs. So first off, Ziggy D has got a build showcase video showing off what a particular build can look like in Grim Dawn. It's a really, really funny video. Highly encourage you to go check it out if you're interested in watching Grim Dawn. No, Ziggy D is not paying me to say this. I just watched some of the video and thought it was funny. I need to go back and finish it. But it's essentially a Reflect or a Thorns build. So imagine just standing there and blocking a bunch of damage, and then people are killing themselves as they hit you. It's a pretty funny concept. So Ziggy D has started contributing, and he's not a small community member by any means in Path of Exile, but he's a rather large figurehead in the Path of Exile gaming community, and he has come out recently and been playing Grim Dawn. Also, Lifting Nerd Bro. He is an awesome streamer as well as YouTube content creator, and I followed several of his builds as I've been getting to know Path of Exile over the years. Really appreciated his content, and he came out with an argument a couple of days ago, 10 reasons to play Grim Dawn, and it's a great argument. There's a lot of great features inside Grim Dawn that he articulates, so definitely go and check that out. Lifting Nerd Bro is not paying me to say that. Also, Demi, those of you that know I am totally a Demi fanboy for all of his standard crafting. He has taught me so much about the game. He came out a couple of weeks ago, I want to say it was a couple of weeks ago, and first started saying, hey, Grim Dawn is an awesome game, and you can purchase it through my Humble Bundle store. No, Demi is not paying me to say this. I'm simply saying this to say, hey, look, here's another awesome, massive community content creator that is now not only plugging Path of Exile and playing and enjoying Path of Exile, but is also enjoying Grim Dawn. All right, Riker. Many of you know Riker. Hello, what is up, guys? Riker here. Anyway, you know Riker from his once-a-week gaming videos, and he came out a week ago with a Grim Dawn overview and review. He's occasionally mentioned Grim Dawn just over the last several months. Every once in a while, he'll talk about Grim Dawn and compare it really with Diablo 3 as well as Path of Exile. But most recently he came out with a straight up overview and review of the game. It's great. You should definitely go ahead and go check that out as well. All right, the Uber Elite is another wonderful, hardcore, absolutely mind-boggling, amazing summoner player in Path of Exile. He does a great job breaking things down, and he recently came out with a Grim Dawn Bleed Pet Conjurer video. That came out a week ago. Pox was one of the guys that I first started watching when I first got into Path of Exile in order to learn about it. And Pox has been on a non-stop tear playing Grim Dawn and teaching players about Grim Dawn. He's really the only one that I've dived in to watch multiple videos of because I just love the way how Pox explained things. No, Pox did not pay me to say that. I just genuinely enjoy his content, and I learned a lot from Pox. So he's been playing Grim Dawn a whole lot, and he said as early, I want to say as 3 weeks or 2 weeks into Synthesis, he simply said, hey, look, I'm not having that much fun playing Synthesis. I'm not done playing Path of Exile, but I'm just going to go play some Grim Dawn for the rest of this league, and then I'll get excited for the next league. It's totally fine, totally appropriate. And then lastly, the Angry RPG player, Angry Gamer, he has been playing a whole bunch of Grim Dawn recently, the Angry Role player. And so I'm just showing this to you guys as a massive kind of discussion point or a massive really informational piece, you know, trying to answer a bunch of you asking the same question all at the same time. Is Path of Exile dying? No, there's just a whole bunch of content and community creators that right now are experiencing what a whole bunch of players in the Path of Exile community are experiencing. A whole bunch of us in the Path of Exile community are simply saying, okay, Synthesis was fun, maybe. Some of us are saying it wasn't. But we're done with it. A lot of people are saying they're done with it. So a lot of people still are playing Synthesis, but it's not that Path of Exile is dying. It's that people are reacting to the Synthesis League and whether or not they want to continue interacting with that. And a large portion of the community, and a large visible portion of the community are saying, nah, we're not that interested. There still are thousands and thousands of people playing Synthesis League. There's a bunch of people playing on a bunch of different platforms that aren't necessarily as easily trackable as Steam, the standalone client. We simply can't track it publicly. GGG has got all of those numbers. The PlayStation 4 numbers can't track those. Xbox One numbers can't track those. So there's a ton of people still enjoying Path of Exile, a ton of people still enjoying Synthesis League. But what I wanted to do here was just to answer that question for those of you that are worried that Path of Exile is dying. No, it's not. Path of Exile could still have 3 to 4 more leagues like Synthesis League where there's still a massive peak. It's still the number 2 overall peak in terms of Twitch count as well as user interaction on Steam in comparison. I don't know what that means for their sales numbers. I don't know what that means for MTXs. I don't know what that means for supporter packs. I have no idea what the data is on that. I'm just using the couple of data points that we've got via Twitch, via YouTube, and via Steam to say, look, I think PoE is going to do just fine. And I think when we compare Synthesis with Bestiary last year, another league that was developed on a similar timeline, another league that was developed at the same time of year, another league that also had a bunch of crafting stuff included, which maybe the PoE community just is kind of like meh about crafting now. Maybe it's just for, top end 1% crafters. And that's okay. Maybe there's just every once in a while there's a league that does that. My final thought on this as we wrap up is that maybe, just maybe, Path of Exile has had the best year of its entire gaming history. So when we look at Bestiary and we say, oh, Bestiary, that was terrible league. Nets were terrible. Einhar was the only saving grace. Beasts were confusing and unkillable. Beast crafting was confusing. Having beast recipes and tradable recipes destroyed the economy. It was just awful. Awful. UI, bugs, everywhere. Awful. Okay. After Bestiary, you've got Incursion, which for the most part has been amazing, and people only have UI improvements and UI suggestions for temples for Incursion. For the most part, people love Incursion and love its inclusion in Path of Exile. Then you've got Delve. Delve, people have said Delve ought to be its entirely separate game unto itself. People have enjoyed it that much that people simply want to delve. When people log into Path of Exile, they go, oh, all I want to do is delve. So Delve has been widely successful. It's optional content, so if you don't want to interact with it, you don't have to. Then you've got Betrayal. Betrayal has got a ton of problems with it, and yet at the same time, there were a ton of people who learned how to make a bunch of in-game currency thanks to the things that Betrayal taught them. Betrayal was the all-time high in terms of Steam count, in terms of Twitch engagement, in terms of YouTube viewership across the board. Betrayal was the peak of popularity thus far in Path of Exile. And now we've got Synthesis. So when we're looking back at it over the last year, we're going, man, maybe they struck out or they swung and missed on Bestiary, and maybe they struck out and swung and missed on Synthesis. And maybe there's still some UI and some lag and some serious issues still with Betrayal. But conceptually, man, Incursion, Delve, and Betrayal, conceptually, those are all some pretty awesome things. And you know what? There's still a bunch of people that really, really like Bestiary now that it's been reworked, now that they took a break from it and reworked it. And chances are, if they apply the same treatment to Synthesis as they did to Bestiary, hey, maybe in 6 months we're going to be saying the same things. When PoE 3.7 and 3.8 come out, we're going to be looking back and going, this synthesis mechanic is actually quite a good thing, and I quite enjoy it. I'm glad they, went back and reworked it. I'm glad they didn't keep it core in the way how it originally came out. But boy, is it a wonderful thing to enjoy now, which is what a lot of us are saying with Bestiary, by the way, a year later. Anyway, those are some thoughts. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. Leave us a comment down below on any of that stuff. We just interacted with a whole bunch of data. I'm sure I'm missing numbers, so if you guys have suggestions of different things that we ought to be factoring in future discussions like this, feel free to drop links down below in the comments. Feel free to lambaste me if you absolutely think that Path of Exile is dying. If you think that for some reason, or maybe for a great many number of reasons, that maybe Synthesis is the end of Path of Exile as we know it, and PoE is on its way to the grave. Also, leave us a comment if at any point in time you've got suggestions for other games that we ought to be playing, or for content that you'd like to see right here on the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope today is the day a Mirror of Calandra drops for you right after you get done watching this video.
Nice patrons, yes, good patrons. They're so kind and supportive.
I can't believe you watched that thing. That was good job. You did it. You got through the whole video. Yay.